Good morning, students. Let us start today's online class. Today I am going to start GK chapter number 33, Literary Personalities. Students, in this chapter we have to go through the famous writers who had given its own contribution for the development of the literature, especially in English. And most of the writers are famous in the world. Their books are greatly, means we can say here, broadly famous, and there are the readers in all over the world. So I'm taking some writers' books and its explanation, whatever they had included in their books. There are some literary personalities. Let us read about them. There are some literary personalities. Personalities means persons. Those have contributed greatly in the field of literature. Number 1, Geoffrey Chaucer, and we can say here he is born on 1343 and died on 1400, stands as the great giant of English poetry, and we can say here he is the pillar of the English poetry, and he had given the good opportunity and to express their view in detail for the future generation. His verse is still read and enjoyed today and often adopted for theater performances. Children, his verses, his stanzas, his poems still read and enjoyed today. People take and enjoy, take pleasure from reading these verses, these stanzas, these poems which he had written and often adopted for the theater performances. And these stanzas are used for the theater performances also. There is a freshness in Chaucer's poetry, and his stories are funny, though he was a philosopher. Means what is here? His stories are funny. Why? This is because he was also philosopher, astronomer and chemist. His stories are funny. I want to tell you here that he had not written any poem with a complete spellings, so it makes his poems funny. So children, you have to go through it properly. Number 2, I am taking Charles Dickinson, and Charles Dickinson, so timing is 1812 to 1870, was an extraordinary man. Really, he was an extraordinary man. He is best known as novelist. Charles Dickinson was famous in the world as the novelist, but he was very much more than that. And means he was very much more than that. We see him as the author of such classics as Oliver Twist. We see him as the author of such classic author. He has included in its novels classicisms which make the people attractive, and it is comparatively standing in with the Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, Great Expectations, A Tale of Two Cities, Grey Black House, and many others. Means he had made such creations like David Copperfield, Great Expectations, A Tale of Two Cities, and Black House, and many others. All of us his novels are English classics. These novels are English classics. Students, I am taking number third, John Donne. His lifespan was from 1572 to 1631. Must be one of the most interesting writer who ever lived. Means John Donne was most interesting writer and who ever lived in that time until now, both as a poet and a man. He was a both as a poet and a man also, because he was showing manhood, and poet characters are included in its creations. His life was a colorful adventure, and his poems are significant feat of language. And his life was really adventure, full of colorful adventure, and his poems are significant feat of language. Means it is these are giving the power. His whatever language he had used in his poems, providing the power of attraction, because after reading the readers attracted towards these poems. So students, there is various characteristics belonging with the writer John Donne. Next one I am taking Jane Austen, means George Eliot. George Eliot, its lifespan is 1819 to 1880. 1819 to 1880 was the pen name of Mary Ann Evans. Miss George Eliot was the pen name of Mary Ann Evans. He was a novelist who produced some of the major classic novels of the Victorian era. Means he had included in his creations about the classic materials, classic characteristics in his novels of the Victorian era. It was the very interesting era, including the mill on the floors. Firstly, he had included in his creations what is here? The mill on the floors, Adam Bede, Silas Marner, Romola Felix Holt, the radical Daniel Deronda, and her masterpiece Middlemarch. These were the creation of this writer, and he had created very nicely. He means he had or writer had represented its creations very attractively, so the readers were already connected with her, and the novels were famous. Next I am taking here John Milton's. Students, his very small lifespan. John Milton had a very shortest lifespan, but he had created very good poems which made him famous. Now he is as famous as the Shakespeare, as a dramatist, and other creators, other authors. What is here? I would like to tell you here. John Milton's 16. Its lifespan is 1608 to 1674. Poetry has been seen as the most perfect poetic expression in English language. In English language, whatever he had given expressions of the poetry, that the poetry, it was perfect with the poetic expressions. His most famous epic poem, Paradise Lost, is a high point of English epic poetry. Means Paradise Lost is most famous poetry which made him familiar in the world, and it was just like epic, English epic poetry. Next one also I'm taking your sixth one, George Orwell. His lifespan is 1903 to 1950. In 1903 to 1950, his lifespan was also very short, means 47 years. Was the pen name of Eric Blair. It was the pen name of Eric Blair, a 20th century writer. Means he was the 20th century writer, equally at home with journalism essay. Means he was equally at journalism. He was the journalist equally as the writer of his period. He had played an important role in the literary criticisms and social commentary also. He had made or he had created on the social commentary, social evils and social improvement. So we can say here comparatively he had played an important role in writing of the different creations like novels, literary criticisms and social worker also. Next one I am taking Jane Austen, and his lifespan was 1775 to 1817 and was an English novelist known primarily for her six major novels which interpreted. Means she had written numbers of the novels, but especially her six major novels which interpret are explained there. Critique you and comment upon the British social orders and the end of the 18th century. At the end of the 18th century, she had given the social order of the Britain, London, whatever was going on. Jane Austen plots often explore the dependence of women on marriage. Especially, she had commented on the dependence of the social of the women on the marriage. She had given on it. She had fill a light on it in the pursuit of favorable social standing and economic security. Actually, it was in the favorable social standing, means whatever people were standing against the women's and standing in the favor of the men's, and that is why she had written on it, and she had explained about the economic security of the women's. Pride and Prejudice, Sense the Sensibility and Emma are her famous works. Means what were the famous works? Pride and Prejudice, especially Pride and Prejudice made her famous in the world, and next one is also Sense and Sensibility and Emma are her famous works which made her famous in the field of creations writings as the novelist. So students, I hope this would be confirmed to you, and you have to go through videos, read the lessons properly so that you be able to understand it. So we will meet you in next lecture. Till then, goodbye.